Carbon fibre wheels, beautifully majestic engineering, or a very fancy donut? So today I have the Winspace Hyper 2023 carbon wheels with carbon spokes, and if I say carbon one more time, we can add another zero to the price. Now these wheels are fancy, they are light, and hopefully they are true. Let's start by addressing the elephant in the room, the price tag. Now these wheels cost $1,300 or 1,070 Great British pounds roughly. Now I could go and buy a second-hand Renault Clio for that price. Now before you all think that the money tree I planted a few months back is the size of a small oak tree, it's not, unfortunately. Winspace actually sent me these wheels for me to review. So thank you Winspace for supporting the channel. One day soon, I'll hopefully be in YouTube profit. So instead of cruising around in a Renault Clio, I am here making this review, and to be honest, I'm buzzing to see how these gorgeous, shiny, glistening donuts perform. I am a sucker for the visuals, I must admit, and these do look good.
Calm down, calm down, calm down.
This is the part where I unbox the wheels in such a suggestive way that you are gazing at the screen, practically dribbling, saying, wow, beautiful. Wow. Beautiful. But today isn't that day, because despite the lovely front bag that holds all of your spare spokes, there are 4 of them, extra valves, tyre levers in the manual, there isn't actually that much in the box. Maybe I can make this more appealing in post-production. Let me give it a try. On first impressions, they do look the part, and they are very light indeed. Literally really light. The type of lightness where you think, how are they actually this light? And we'll be putting them on the scales a little bit later in the video and finding out exactly how much they weigh. Visually, they're also pretty appealing. The way the carbon is laid creates this pretty unique look when it catches the rare UK sun. The decals are a similar colour as well to the carbon, and they blend in quite nicely. They are slightly pronounced, but they have this sort of dotted effect, which is different, but we like different. Sizing wise, the front and the rear wheel are actually a little bit different. Now the depth of the front wheel is a claimed 45mm on the Winspace website, and the rear is deeper at 55mm. The front wheel is a shallower depth so that it's not as susceptible to crosswinds, which will affect your steering and the handling of the bike. When I measured the front wheel with my trusty vernier caliper, it measured at 47.9, and in a different location on the wheel 47.8, so it's marginally bigger than the claimed 45mm. A little bit of extra carbon. The rear wheel was 55.8 on the first measurement and 55 on the second measurement, so basically bang on the money. Now the outer width is a claimed 27.6 on the Winspace website, and that was pretty much what I got. I measured 3 times on the front, and I got 27.7, 27.8 and 27.5. And the rear was 27.9, 28 and 27.7. But who cares about the outer width? More importantly, what is the internal rim width? Now these days people seem to like a larger internal width so that your tyre doesn't look like a portobello mushroom when seated on the rim. So the claimed inner width for these wheels is 21mm. On the front we were pretty much on the money. I had measurements of 21.1, 21.1 and 21, and on the rear I had 21 and 21.3. Now in all seriousness, a wider inner rim width can actually have some pretty significant benefits for your ride. The spokes on these things are more like a samurai sword, to be honest. They are carbon 1mm deep and 3mm wide. Now looking online, there seems to be some mixed opinions on carbon spokes, so there is only one solution. Let's ask artificial intelligence. To summarise, artificial intelligence thinks that carbon spokes are strong, stiff and light, creating an overall lighter wheel that's more responsive. So it depends on a number of factors. If you have a money tree and your overall preference basically and what's required from your bike. So let me know what you think. Is the AI correct when it comes to carbon spokes? It's worth noting that the spoke pattern on these Winspace Hyper 2023 wheels means that the actual spokes don't touch each other. There is a small gap between them where they cross. They aren't siblings, they're more like neighbours. Now in search of the truth and to fuel my AliExpress buying addiction, I made a couple of purchases on AliExpress. Now this truing stand, which was £140, and this digital spoke tension meter, which was £27, It does feel like I'm about to perform surgery bolting the stand down to the table. Now we have these 3 dials, one for side to side trueness, one for radial trueness, I think that's what it's called, and the 3rd dial is to check the disc brake to make sure that that is not like a piece of spaghetti. Now this is the first time I've actually used these tools, so do comment down below if you have any tips or tricks or you see me using them like I'm a few levels back on the evolution scale.
I have no knowledge.
First, let's look at the rear wheel. Now with the stand, we can measure the roundness of the rim in a couple of ways. Firstly, we can use the metal on the stand to push against the rim and simply listen to see where the rim touches the metal, and it will make a scraping sound. Now, I'm not going to lie, this scraping sound was painful to listen to on these new wheels. Overall though, the roundness seemed okay using this method. Now what you want is a consistent sound, which means there isn't much variation or deviation. Now the second method is to use a dial in order to actually check the amount of deflection, or whatever you want to call it, that occurs in the roundness of this wheel. Now after some initial setup and checking, I realised that the deflection was actually about 0.03 millimeters, so basically nothing. So the roundness is good, but what about the trueness, or should I say the side to side trueness, or the movement? The wobble basically, that no one wants. Hopefully there is minimal. Now on the dial, each little notch is 0.01 millimeters. So from 0 to 10 will be 1 mil, just to give you some context. So when I put this on the side of the wheel, I can see that the maximum deflection is about 0.9 millimeters. So again, that doesn't seem too much at all. We can then repeat the same steps with the front wheel and check the roundness and trueness on the sound check. It was pretty decent. It doesn't sound like the 7th Symphony though, more like scratching a whiteboard. Eek. But the sound was pretty consistent, indicating that the roundness was actually okay. Now let's confirm that with the dial, and we can see that the maximum deviation is around 0.03 to 0.04 mil, so all good there. On the front, I also tried using the rubber jaws to listen to see how that side to side trueness was, and again, it didn't seem too bad. Now when using the dial on the front, there was pretty much no movement at all. You can see the dial remain stationary as the wheel turns. So while they may be a very expensive donuts, these donuts run true in every single direction. Delightful. Now the hubs were also pretty smooth. As you can see in these shots, the ceramic bearings just spin and spin and spin. I also spun the wheels in my hand because, you know, the old sausages can feel any grinding going on inside pretty well, and to my touch they were actually silky smooth. Truthfully, it's actually really satisfying, and I spent way too long spinning these wheels in my hands alone in my shed. There are worse things I could be addicted to though, right?
Are you okay?
Now remember that other spontaneous tool that I bought from AliExpress earlier? It's time to put that to use and check the spoke tension. I started by checking each spoke on the rear wheel. Now there are 14 spokes on the drive side to the right and 7 spokes on the left, the non-drive side. As each spoke is checked, I put the amount into the Park Tools fancy checking tool. I measured each spoke a few times to make sure that the reading was actually accurate and that this newbie wasn't doing anything drastically wrong. I repeat the process on the other side, starting at the valve at points. I wish I had 4 hands, but I got there in the end. Now with the numbers all entered into the tool, I clicked update, and would you believe it, all green. I actually have no idea what this means, but I can see why trying to build the perfect wheel is like trying to cook the perfect souffle. It requires precision and patience, and hopefully you'll have a delicious end result. And don't worry, I'm not going to be trying to eat these wheels anytime soon. The front wheel was a similar story. Check each side and add all the info into the tool. Interestingly, the higher spoke count is now on the left side of the wheel where the disc brake is located. Now when clicking update, we got the green tick again. We have a perfectly balanced souffle, carbon wheel set. So the big question is, how much do these wheels weigh? Now the front wheel weighs 635 grams, as you can see here. The rear wheel weighs a grand total of 810 grams. That gives us a grand total front and rear wheels of 1,445 grams, which is only 20 grams more than the claimed 1,221 grams from the Winspace website. We'll take that. Now, if you want to see me ride these wheels, click here to subscribe, because the ride video is coming soon where I put these carbon wheels through their paces and see if they are truly worth their price tag.